Frank, thank you for joining. We were chatting backstage. I mentioned that you're one of the few people I don't know already, and a lot of people might know your name, might know you by reputation. But I would love to start with my favorite question that I always ask everyone is, how did you get here, right, to this stage in particular? Because you've had a long career. We talked about backstage, 5 generations of builders in your family, successful entrepreneur, businessman, philanthropist, multiple sports teams. I actually met his GM for the Marseille Football Club at the Paris Blockchain Week event and dinner we were talking about. But what has gotten you kind of deep into this realm and has sparked your interest, curiosity, and I think maybe that's a good kind of journey and jumping off point for Project Liberty.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Ryan, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I've come at this really from the vantage point of kind of a builder of things. I'm a 5th generation. As you mentioned, the family business is a building business. We're celebrating our 130th year, and we build large, complicated infrastructure projects, amongst other things. And it really became apparent to us within the last 10 years that the current internet design is really fundamentally flawed and needs to be fixed from the bottom up. So that's what brought me to the stage today, and that's what's really guided and really animated our work.
Talk a little bit about Project Liberty so folks understand the big kind of 30,000-foot vision to fix the internet.
Yeah, so it's a big endeavor, right? So I think to achieve the objectives here that presumably all of you want to achieve, and probably most of your guests here at this conference, I think we need to make this a bigger project. In other words, a political, a social project, not just a crypto project. And in my experience, during the course of my life, in terms of being successful at big change, requires bringing lots of people into that conversation and convincing them that it's worth their while. So you've got to connect with people with their hearts as well as their minds. And so Project Liberty is really thinking about this larger project and leading with that sense of hey, this is good for you, a social good, as opposed to leading with, hey, we can make a lot of money. And of course, this next generation of the internet will enable lots of people to create lots of value and make money, but I think we're better served if we raise the level of the conversation around, look, the internet as we know it is broken, let's fix it, and this time, let's get it right by embedding the values that we want and optimizing for the things we want as a society, right? And so it's really getting to the same place that everybody here wants to get, but a path of less resistance.
And you're really coming at this from the consumer angle, the data and kind of social media, I'd say, angle versus the cryptocurrency angle, right? So really, I think thematically, the last few years, we've just started to see kind of the emergence of decentralized, social applications, or people really thinking about, I think, especially since Elon took the helm of Twitter, the decentralization of these communication platforms and how serious it is to make them more robust. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the early projects that are under this umbrella that you're excited about as some of the first most interesting areas to onboard, maybe like the Web 2 world, and start to slowly decentralize it, starting maybe with social media, but then expanding beyond that?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I think it's far easier, but let me put it differently. I think it's going to be very difficult to onboard lots and lots of people into this new world by moving forward along the path of most resistance. And so I would argue that focusing on how much money can I make, focusing on limiting it to crypto, right, or to currencies and so forth, it's a very, very difficult path, okay? You're not only taking on the big tech platforms, you're taking on the big banks, the credit card companies, the SEC, the Federal Reserve, fiat currency, et cetera, et cetera. So what if we approach this from the other end, and introduce people through social? People don't like Facebook. Twitter's kind of a mess. We are watching this argument between Musk and Zuckerberg as to who owns the data. Musk says, hey, that's my data, you stole it. And Zuckerberg says, no, it's my data. Well, isn't the point here that it's not either of their data, it's our data, right? It's your data, it's your data, it's yours. And this is what we're trying to achieve. So let them make the argument for us, right? You know, cage fight or no cage fight, let them just make this argument that they're fighting over something that shouldn't be theirs in the first place. And let's bring people in a way that it's easy. It's a path of less resistance through social, and then bring them all the way to ownership and control of their data, and then eventually to the value proposition. So it's a process that where you bring lots of people in, not just people super familiar with the technology and so forth, and then it starts to feel much more like a movement. It starts to feel much more like a cause that really people can get behind of all stripes. So that's the thought process. On the second part of your question about specific ways of doing that, you know, one of my colleagues here, Braxton Woodham, who runs our Amplica Labs, talked earlier today about frequency, which is a layer 1 chain that makes it easy for apps, social or fintech or other and so forth, to build using kind of this complicated technology. But a really important point to make is Project Liberty includes a open source, non-tokenized protocol that should be for the people, right? We call it DSNP, a decentralized social networking protocol. I think that's really important because if we think about the internet in generations, first generation, the internet, the connected computers was enabled by a protocol, right? TCP/IP. Second generation, which has been a generation of the internet that connected data, enabled by a protocol, HTTP. Third generation of the internet, which is where we are right now, should be enabled by a core protocol, DSNP, for example, that really connects people. So computers to data to people. So DSNP down here, frequency here, and then apps here. Lastly, I would just say, I see my friend Jeffrey here, MeWe is the first social media app to migrate over to DSNP using frequency. And so, you know, and you'll be hearing a lot about MeWe because in very short order, it will be the largest decentralized social network in the world. So, but it's the beginning of a revolution.
Well, there's a couple competitors in the industry that might take exception to that, but I think one way or the other, you mentioned the cage match. If we could stream it using decentralized social media, X and Threads from Dodger Stadium, I mean, would you be willing to host that?
Well, we want to use a lot of real assets here too, right? So this is about meeting people where they are, right? And sports is a great example. Yeah. That's people, you know, that's one of the few things in this world that continues to attract people real time in their attention.
You know, I think I agree with your thesis on not starting with the path of, you know, most resistance, which is money and financial services, and trying to onboard people through, you know, cultural products or consumer products, and you've hit on decentralized social, and I think other people are in that realm. I'm curious what if you've explored NFTs, right? We don't really have a whole lot of NFT, you know, content in this agenda. It's, you know, what's an NFT, or, you know, whatever. Remember NFTs? I think I've heard a couple times this week, and that's definitely kind of in the, I'd say, deepest part of the bear cycle right now for some of the new innovations within crypto. But have you experimented with this either for the sports clubs or, you know, anything else as you think about this general thesis, maybe outside of decentralized social and what you're doing with MeWe?
Yeah, I mean, NFTs have a role to play here for sure. We have another company by the name of Element that just landed a contract with League One, which is the big league in France, in Europe, to actually mint live or near live NFT videos. So somebody scores a goal, somebody owns that moment. But I think there's so much more that we need to talk about. And I want to go back to Project Liberty for a minute, because we could talk about Element or Frequency or MeWe or 1,000 other things. It's going to be a tough go, in my opinion, to actually have a revolution occur without making it a social project. That's really the fundamental thesis and what I want to share with you. And it's, if we can get behind a big idea, like a Project Liberty, right? Which is, and call it what you will, but something that's not about moving first with making the money, but it's moving first with the mission orientation of what this next generation of the web represents, and what all you are trying to do. And again, path of least resistance, not path of most resistance. And I really would invite you all to kind of check out projectliberty.io. It's yours as much as mine, right? It's a 501c3. Everybody can get involved, and it needs everybody involved. One of the things we've done, for instance, with it is put out a bunch of ads with moms who have lost kids because of the harms of social media. Well, that's a hearts issue, right? That's an emotional issue, and gets people who are don't know what crypto is, don't care what crypto is, may have read about it and think it's not a great thing, but they care that social media is killing their kids, okay? Yep. So let's fix the whole thing, create a new internet that is people forward, people centric, and that does all the cool things that the current internet does, but way more, because in this next generation of the internet, as you all know, data has value, and let's give people some of that value, as opposed to have it all just, all the data hoovered up and all the value sitting in 4 or 5 companies. It's just fundamentally not fair. Mm-hmm. And so I think we just need a strategy to make this, bigger than any one of us.
Isn't the strategy finding the small wedges, right? The small ideas that blow up into big things. So, I think I agree. I think most people that are kind of sitting listening to this conversation, probably in this room, because they're 90% aligned in terms of that vision for the future, and whether it's money, whether it's decentralized social, whether it's just breaking up some of the not breaking up, but decentralizing some of the big tech infrastructure that we use on a day-to-day basis. I think most people probably agree with that. I go to the specifics just because I tend to think that these big structural problems that everybody agrees with are only going to be solved by small companies that catch fire and then grow into big companies, or small open source projects that catch fire and grow into kind of big open source projects. So, I think Project Liberty and what it stands for, and some of the things you're talking about resonate. How does this project kind of throw fuel on the fire of like the individual projects or the individual entrepreneurs, versus kind of start with a very like amorphous big vision, but then you're kind of saying, okay, that sounds great, where's the execution? Right? Who's going to build it? Yeah,
perfect, because I'm not arguing that we put all the small projects aside.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we create the parade, okay, with the banner, and we get going. And the parade just gets bigger and bigger. So we want all the small projects. We want the big project. It's going to take a lot. But remember, in the second generation of the internet, the game was who can create the killer app that everybody gravitates to, the platform, right? So all that data can be hoovered up.
Yep.
This next generation of the internet is not about killer apps. It's about a killer ecosystem, right? Where let's take X again, right?
Yep.
The super app, okay? It's one guy trying to centralize everything to do everything. It's just, in my opinion, fundamentally incorrect, okay, as a thesis. What if we have a killer ecosystem where many people, in a decentralized way, can do everything within that ecosystem? And it will become very simple. It will all get it will all get reduced to mobile. You'll be able to do all the same stuff, but it won't be all data gathered up in one place It will be all over the place. It won't be all, you know, I've got the app that does everything, that can control everything. It's just a fundamentally wrong way of thinking about this. It's an old way of thinking about things. It's a closed way. It's a centralized way. It's a tired way. It's a traditional way. We need an open way, a decentralized way, a new way, an exciting way. And remember, tech, this stuff is 30 years old. It's really old, and we should just call it out. It's old stuff that people are trying to like really squeeze as much as they can and be the new bosses, you know? And I just think I'm very passionate about it because, you know, I mentioned 130 years, right? So my ancestors came here to leave a feudal system.
Yep.
You know, to come to a place where they could actually have rights. They could own things. You know, they were a person, not a subject. And here we are again. The tech is going 100 miles an hour into the future. That's awesome. But we're going 100 miles an hour in the opposite direction, back to a feudal system. It's stupid. And we fought to build a project here, a real like analog American project, to have individual rights, liberties, you know, freedoms, choice, permission, and create something that was decentralized, but we could all agree we have a project here called America, right, in that case. Well, we need a generation of the internet that actually optimizes for those things. I mean, how do you have a democracy with autocratic technology? It's impossible. You have an awesome autocracy. So we've got to, when I keep on urging people to think about this as a social project or a political project, it's not a feel-good project. It's like it's the only way, in my experience, in my life, change happens when people get engaged. And people don't get engaged when you try to sell them a concept called crypto and making money. People get engaged when you grab them here. And you say, this matters to you. This matters to your kids. This matters to the country. This matters to your family. And we're going to make money. So it's what you lead with is very often going to dictate, and how you set your project up, how well you'll succeed. And this is my experience. And I'm older than most everybody I'm looking at, so you can take it or leave it, but I've learned the hard way.
We have a couple minutes left, so we'll do a little bit of a lightning round here. What do you think is preventing this vision of the future from happening? Right. So like, what are the blockers right now? You know, we come on the stage next year and we've made like tangible progress. What are the things that we need to be unblocked with as an industry, either infrastructure-wise? Marketing and messaging-wise, what do you think are the big? If you could leave people with like a couple takeaways and like calls to action. Yeah. Most of our other talks, there's a lot of tokens involved. There's you know.
Yeah, I think what you're saying I kind of referred to it when I said, I feel like we've been taking the path of most resistance. Okay, so let's take the path of least resistance, and the narrative is screwed. I mean, it's been a failed approach, you know, kind of the crypto narrative, blockchain, NFT, dodgy this, dodgy that. People kind of like push it over there now and say it's not been successful branding or narrative in the least. Let's rebrand it in terms of the third generation of the internet for people, okay, yep, that can do a lot of things, including transform our financial systems. And let's think about elevating this, rebranding it, new narrative, and start with something that meets people where they are with what they care about, instead of
trying to
making it narrow-minded about money and super complicated.
Yep.
Okay, it's a really complicated. Let's simplify it. And once it's simplified and people understand it, I think we're going to see this happen really fast. So I just think it's a matter of getting really reset here, and then lead with something that's good for people, not just about the money.
Frank, it's a pleasure. You have a book coming out. Am I allowed to say that? Or is that?
No, it's okay. Yeah, hopefully Q1, and talking about this in greater detail than we've had during 30 minutes. But I do appreciate the time, and thank you all for listening.
I don't want to scoop you on that, but thank you very much. And much more where that came from. Frank
Great.
McCourt.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
That was fun.
Take care.